जिंदा खुदा से दिल जो लगाते तो खूब था।
जिंदा खुदा से दिल जो लगाते तो खूब था।
मुर्दा बुतों से जान, मुर्दा बुतों से जान छुड़ाते तो खूब था।
Okay, I think let's start. So may I request Haris Shakil for Sval, please.
Yes, Assalamualaikum. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله. واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن فعظوهن واهجروهن في المضاجع واضربوهن. فإن أطعنكم فلا تبغوا عليهن سبيلا إن الله كان عليا كبيرا. The verses recited before you are taken from the Holy Quran, chapter 4, verse 35, and the English translation is as follows. I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed, in the name of Allah, the gracious, ever merciful. Men are guardians over women, because Allah has made some of them excel others, and because men spend unto them of their wealth. So virtuous women are obedient and guard the secrets of their husbands with Allah's protection. And for those on whose part you fear disobedience, admonish them and keep away from them in their beds, and chastise them. Then if they obey you, seek not a way against them. Surely Allah is high and great. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Today the topic is on marriage and the importance of respecting one another. So as usual, I will give a talk. Now this time I will stop about halfway through and open it up for any questions and comments. And if there's still more time, then we'll continue this and then again open it up for any comments and questions. Right, marriage. Of course, marriage in Islam is a very important institution. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad has said that when a man has married, he has completed half of his faith. Again, it's related by the Holy Prophet Muhammad that marriage is my sunnah, my practice. And those who do not follow my sunnah, my practice, are not from me. So here it shows the importance of getting married, and that is the practice of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. Of course, he married many, many times. And so we should try our best to get married. Now, in marriage, there are three basic reasons for a marriage, and they are that it enables a man and a woman to live together and to experience love and happiness within the Islamic law. Secondly, to produce children and provides a stable and righteous environment for their upbringing. And thirdly, to provide a legal union which safeguards society from moral and social degradation. Now, a marriage is for two people to share on a spiritual and physical journey. Just bear with me 1 second while I cut this noise. Sorry about that, they're doing some cooking for the homeless, and I don't know if you could hear it, but I could hear it. Right, so as I was saying, that's for marriage, it involves two people, and it's a spiritual and physical journey. So it's not just for this world. We have to bear in mind that a good marriage will continue in the next life as well. And so you're building it in this world and then continuing in the spiritual world, inshallah, in the state of paradise. So it creates a very pious and safe environment to raise our children and protect and develop taqwa in them and enable them to become God-fearing servants of Allah. Now, this is very important. If we look at the Nikah sermon, which the Holy Prophet Muhammad used to give, and of course we always do when we do a marriage, it emphasizes on this point so much that 5 times the word taqwa is mentioned. And that's very important, that you bring Allah into the marriage. So it's not just two people and two families, but Allah should also be there, and you should always be striving to please Allah. And if that's there, then inshallah, that will make a very good marriage. Now, of course, these days, there is many ills. And one of these problems that we're seeing, especially these days, is the breakdown in marriages. It's becoming so common that it's now regularly happening, and in so much so that it's now also affecting Ahmadi families. That where there was a time where very rarely there was a divorce. Now, unfortunately, we're seeing that this is happening more and more. And of course, there is many reasons for these breakdowns, but the most important reason, I feel anyway, is due to a lack of taqwa. So this is what I'm saying, that needs to be in a marriage. And if it's not there, then problems can arise, because you should always be doing things to please Allah. And for the sake of Allah, you're striving to make a good marriage. The Holy Prophet Muhammad said that the best among you are those who are good to their families. But he then went on to say that I am the best of those who are good to their families. So, of course, we should always look to the example of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And as I said, he married many, many times. So there are plenty of examples to see. And it was always due to taqwa. That was the strength in his marriages. And that's the thing which we need to instill in our marriages. Again, the Holy Prophet Muhammad said that the most perfect of believers in respect of their faith are those whose behavior is most excellent. And the best of you are those who behave best towards their wives. So again, this is a very clear message about our behavior, striving to please Allah. And because of that, so we should be behaving very well towards our wives. And so again, we need to keep thinking over this, that how are we behaving? And are we pleasing Allah? Are the people closest to us, our wife and children, are they pleased with our example? Because as I said, we always follow the example of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And his example was to always strive for the sake of Allah, to create that safe, peaceful family home. And he developed an excellent relationship with all of his wives by offering them kindness and love. And because of that kindness and love, his wife responded. So as I said, the example's there that he had so many wives, yet, alhamdulillah, they were all very successful marriages. They all got on well with each other because they knew that Allah was also there. Again, the Holy Prophet Muhammad has said that the world is but a provision, and none of the provisions of the world is better than a pious wife. This is the person who's closest to you. You're sharing this journey with. And so that's the best provision for you to take to the next life, that you're looking after your wife and she's responding, and through her piety, you're creating that Islamic home, which is then affecting your children, your relatives, and so on and so forth. So this is why the best provision for the world is a pious wife. Again, the Holy Prophet Muhammad has said that let no Muslim entertain any rancor against a Muslim woman. Should there be something which he dislikes about her, then there are many other things which is pleasing. So look in the positive all the time. Don't look at the negative. Look at those things which is pleasing, which you enjoy. Don't look at weaknesses that everyone has. It's easy to pinpoint faults out, but look at the strengths. Look at what she's bringing into the marriage, and that will make your marriage very, very strong. So it is this fact which helps every marriage, because we are all different. We all have different outlooks and goals, and we all want different things. But for a successful marriage, then you have to look at the common things and not the differences. So I hope you can't hear that, but again, they're doing some cooking, unfortunately, and now it looks like the cooking has set off the fire alarm. But anyway, hopefully that will go in a second. If not, I have to go and sort that out. Right, so again, as I said, we are different. We all have different ways of looking at things. But for a successful marriage, and I'm sure this is what everyone wants, don't look at those differences. Forget about those differences. Look instead to the common things. So marriage is a partnership. And for any successful partnership, both parties have to work hard. Of course, there will be differences and arguments, but you should work together to resolve these differences and help one another. Right, I think I finished that one. So again, the Holy Prophet Muhammad was asked that what is the right of a wife against her husband? And the Holy Prophet Muhammad replied that first, feed her when you feed yourself. Clothe her when you clothe yourself. Do not strike her on the face. Do not revile her, and do not separate yourself from her except inside the house. Now here again, the role of the man is the provider. It's his job to provide food, to provide a home, and so on and so forth. So he should be providing food for her and for the family. He should be clothing her and the family. But this is very, very important. This is what I'm going to come on to now. Do not strike her on the face, nor abuse her or anything like this. And don't separate yourself from her except inside the house. So again, of course, you should be there to protect your wife. And it's very important on how you resolve issues. The Holy Quran relates, and this is the verse that we began with. And as for those on whose part you fear disobedience, admonish them and keep away from their beds, and then chastise them. Now, what does this verse mean? This means that if a wife is seriously disobedient to her husband for whatever reason, what should the husband do? So, first of all, he should try and convince her of her fault, that this he feels is un-Islamic. Woman should not be doing this, and she should stop doing this thing. If that fails, then he should cease to have any conjugal relations with her. But there is a limit for that, according to, again, the Islamic teachings, that it can only be for 4 months. But this is one way. I always think that actually that is the man suffering, but that's a way to show your displeasure, to try to resolve this problem. Now, only and only in extreme circumstances is he allowed to chastise her. That should not be a beating, and this is what we need to understand. Unfortunately, customs have crept in, and we do see this. And of course, before Islam, pre-Islam, it was very common for the man to beat his wife. But Islam put a stop to that. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad, this was never his example. What this means, this chastisement, is the same chastisement as you would give your child. And of course, we must never beat our child. If you beat a child, you can be arrested. So it's not to hit a child and beat the child. Yes, you may spank the child if need be, but you should not be leaving any marks or anything like this. As I said, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, he was the best exemplar. So we should always be turning to his example. And he was the best person who treated his wives best. But there's no record at all showing that he ever beat any of his wives. This is, like I say, chastisement, but a punishment, not beating. Again, it's related by Hazrat Aisha, Radhiyallahu anha, that Holy Prophet Muhammad never beat anyone, neither a woman nor a servant. Although he fought in the cause of Allah, he fought many wars. If he was ever harmed by anyone, he would not avenge himself. He never sought revenge. But of course, whenever a sacred place of Allah was desecrated, he would take revenge for the sake of Allah. So for Allah's sake, then yes, there may be, he would cause his displeasure and so on and so forth. But for himself, this was never the case. Again, the Holy Prophet Muhammad said, to treat a wife tenderly and put a morsel in her mouth is charitable. The more civil and the kinder is a Muslim to his wife, the more perfect of faith he is. Fear Allah with reference to two meek beings, women and orphans. So again, it's very clear advice by the Holy Prophet Muhammad to always treat your wife kindly and tenderly. And even putting some food in her mouth, this is a form of winning Allah's pleasure. It's charitable, and Allah is pleased with such things. So you should always show kindness to your wife. And as it's saying here, that people, meek beings, the women and the orphans, we should take care of both of these. Again, from another one of the wives of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, Salama, she relates, that the Holy Prophet Muhammad said, if a woman dies and her husband is pleased with her, she will enter paradise. So again, this shows how by a woman behaving nicely and having that strong marriage, you can attain paradise. So, as I said, this practice of beating wives, this was never found in Islamic households. It may be, found in Islamic households, but it is not an Islamic practice. It was something which the Holy Prophet put a stop to, and therefore it is not allowed in Islam. Okay, as I said, there's quite a bit more to cover, but this is the first part which I want to open up to see if anybody's got any questions or comments they'd like to make on this. So the ball's now in your court. You can raise your hand, you can go to the chat line, or you can just speak. So anybody got anything, or we move on? Any chats?
If no one has a question now, the question is that how can we educate and do tabligh to people who don't want to get married?
Who don't want to get married?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, as we said, this is the practice of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, and it's very important that they should be getting married. So the question comes that why? Why aren't they getting married? What is causing them to not get married? Because this is what Allah wants, and it's very important. It's, we are a being which we have a community. We don't have isolation. We don't just cut ourselves off and have no contact with anyone. And this is very clear that you shouldn't just go off in the desert and just cut yourself off from the world. We should be part of the world, and marriage is part of the world, to share your life, to have children. I've gone through the 3 basic reasons of getting married. So why? Why is a person not getting married? Again, there are reasons, of course, for that, but generally they should be getting married. So, of course, for us, we will always encourage a person to get married. It's their choice. We can't force anybody, but they should realize that this is what Allah wants. And for the sake of pleasing Allah, and obviously, as I said, for attaining paradise, because they'll be answerable to Allah. So there may be genuine reasons, but that's between him and Allah. But we should encourage the person to get married. It's important. And of course, if there is a person who is converted to Islam and they may be already having a girlfriend or boyfriend pre-Islam, then the same thing, we would encourage to try to get that partner to become a Muslim and then have a proper marriage. So I hope that's answered the question. There's a hand up, so yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome,
I just wanted to go over the fact that, you know, if in Islam it condemns all forms of violence against women, then why do we have a specific verse, you know, in the Quran in form of Surah An-Nisa, talking about that if you do want to, you know, chastise your wife, etc., going after all the conditions, that in the very extreme form that we can physically punish our wife?
Well, as I pointed out, and let's see if I can rewind that a bit for you. There are 3 steps, which obviously we should try to take if we can. And it's only this final step where if we've been unable to resolve the matter, then again, what to do? I mean, if the woman is doing something which is un-Islamic, then obviously you need to do something there. You need to try to resolve the problem. You don't want to end up in divorce, which is the final step, of course, if you can't do anything. So first of all, like I say, as it says here, you should try and convince her that what is the problem? This is not what you want. This shouldn't be happening. And of course, try and emphasize it. It should be, of course, something she's doing un-Islamic, not just because you don't like it. If it is something which is good and you don't like it, then you're at fault. But if she's doing something un-Islamic, and obviously she shouldn't be doing that, then the husband should try to correct her. And so you try and convince her that this is the thing, this shouldn't be happening. But if she does not listen, then go to the second step, as we said, that you go into separate beds, and hopefully she will realize again that you are not happy with the situation. But it's this final step which you're talking about, the chastisement. But that chastisement, like I say, it shouldn't be, there are many ways. I mean, with a child, you make sure that the child understands that what they're doing is wrong. And that's just our role as parents, that we have to try to correct our children. But that doesn't mean you go and beat the child. Of course, that's not the way. And this is why in this country especially, it's so much against beating a child. But having punishments, whatever punishment you feel, but that should be there to try to correct the child. And it's the same with the wife, that you don't turn to beating the wife. This was not the practice of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. But some other form of chastisement can be there to try to get through to the wife that this is wrong. Because, as I said, if that does not work, then the only step left is divorce, and you don't really want to go to divorce. So I hope that's explained it for you. In Islam, you know, when the woman is silent, it's taken as yes. So I'm taking that as a yes. Right, any other questions? Okay, I thought there'd be quite a lot of questions on that, but you can come back to it. It's not a problem. We will give you another opportunity a bit later on. But let me now continue with the talk. Let me just catch up. Right. Okay, so continuing about a marriage. Now, as I said, the main secret of having a good marriage is that you strive to please Allah. Always try to bring Allah into the equation, and that will create that Islamic home, and there will be then that love and kindness which will make everyone happy. So, as I said, marriage is not about abusing one another, or, which is common these days, putting money and worldly things before Allah. This is one of the problems, nowadays, unfortunately, that people are becoming more materialistic, and that puts pressure on then the husband to provide. They want to spend money and going beyond what is the income. So again, in a marriage, it's all about discussing and making sure that you're keeping within whatever income you have, and not creating these problems. Because if these things build and build, it puts a lot of stress on the marriage, and that can be then taken other ways which can destroy the marriage. So a good, successful marriage means that both the husband and wife are working together through all the ups and downs, and they will go through these things, and that will make it stronger, because of all the problems they're facing. Of course, in every marriage, there has to be ups and downs. They're never going to be always up. There will be problems, but you face them together, you work them out together, and that is what a marriage is all about. So again, if we look at the example of your parents and your grandparents, how did their marriage last for so long? I hope they did, but normally we see that their marriages did last a long time. But like I say, the problem today is that it's easy to get divorced, and the taboo of getting divorced has been removed. And we're seeing all around us on TV, in the news, and everywhere that divorce is happening all the time. Marriages are breaking down. And so this has a psychological effect on you. And some people are known that the very first argument, they've asked for divorce straight away. I mean, you have to try and work through these things. And especially in the beginning of a marriage, it takes some time to work things out, to understand each other. So, you know, in Islam, we try to look at the long game, not the short game. And so, therefore, we try to work these things out. Sometimes, of course, marriage doesn't work. Allah understands this, we understand it, that despite everything, it fails. But we should always bear in mind, the Holy Prophet Muhammad has told us that the most disliked thing of all lawful things in the sight of Allah is divorce. So it's allowed, but it's something which Allah doesn't like and wants to see you making efforts to prevent that if possible. And alhamdulillah, in Islam, there are checks to help us to try to avoid ending up with the marriage breakup. So we should benefit from these checks. So divorce can happen, it is lawful, but it should be the very last and final step, that all these checks should be done beforehand to try to prevent such a thing happening. So before that, we must try to resolve these problems. And that means listening to one another. And this is one of the biggest problems, that people do not listen to one another. Listen to one another and try to do what's best for Allah. Put Allah first and strive to please Allah. So if you do that, that helps greatly in resolving matters. So this should always be our goal, to strive to win Allah's pleasure and act upon what Allah's told us. Everything He's told us is good. So if we act upon that, then you will overcome many of these problems that we see in marriage. Our beloved Hazur, may Allah always be helper, desires that the Ahmadiyya society should be free from such bad practices, and all the Ahmadi dwellings are demonstration of heaven on earth. A very short, nice thing, but that's the main thing, that we should keep away from these bad practices. Create a good Islamic home. And then that will be not only good for you, but other people will see that you've got a healthy, beautiful marriage going on. So this is everything, something which every one of us should be desiring. We want these things, and this is the way to achieve it. Now, of course, as a support to a marriage, the parents also play a very important role to help and guide the married couple. They've got the experience, they're in a position to help you. And it's very important that a married couple does go and get advice from the parents. They've got that experience, and they themselves have been through the hard times as well. As I said, this is common with every marriage, and even your parents' marriage, they would have gone through hard times. So they will be there to help you through your hard times and to support you when you need it. But of course, the parents should always remember that this is not their marriage. Guidance, wisdom, experience is there, but they should not be interfering. And this is, again, one of the problems that we sometimes see, that the parents, instead of guiding the young couple, they are interfering and they make unreasonable demands. And that creates then even further problems. For instance, we see that once a girl gets married, then more often than not, because obviously there's lack of money, so the girl begins the married life at the husband's parents' home. And in this way, of course, it enables them to save money so that they can get their own home. Now, many conflicts could happen. Naturally, the new wife wants to cook for her husband and try to love and help her new in-laws for her husband's sake to make that very good marriage. But sometimes she finds that despite these efforts, she's not welcome. And sometimes it is due to jealousy that the mother doesn't want to, as we call them in Islam, cut the apron strings. She still wants to be the mother of her son and not share the new wife with his son. So even though she knows that they're married, this unfortunately carries on sometimes. And so what she does is she starts treating the daughter-in-law badly and making her into some sort of personal slave, demanding that she does everything and never satisfied with what she does. But then what she does is she starts complaining to her son about his wife. And of course, the son wants to be an obedient son. And so now he'll go to his wife and start complaining to her that why are you misbehaving? She will try to defend herself and it causes them to argue. So sometimes when we look into it and try to help a married couple and we find that this problem is there, it's something which I don't like doing, but sometimes I have to suggest that if you want this marriage to work, then you actually have to move out of the parents' home. As I said, that should not be an advice that someone should give, but sometimes it happens and it creates such a problem that is splitting up the family, and the only solution is that they should move out and then try to strive on themselves. So this is important. What we need to understand, that as parents, we are there to guide them, to advise them, to help them, but it is their marriage. They have to make their own mistakes. They have to do their own things. So we can guide them, but we should not be interfering and insisting. So, of course, naturally, no woman wants to move out of her husband's home. Not when we're told by the Holy Prophet Muhammad that paradise lies under the feet of your mother. But sometimes, like I say, they're given no choice, because instead of finding paradise, they're finding hell. So we should think about what is happening and what we're doing. The best way is to treat your daughter-in-law like it was one of your own daughters. How you treat your own daughter is no one of your daughters. She has come into the family, but now she's part of your family. And so therefore, you should help and support her and treat her nicely. And with that love, she will herself respond and will become an obedient and loving daughter-in-law, just like it would be an obedient and loving daughter. And more importantly, she will become a loving, loyal wife to your son, which is what you should be wanting to see. Now, sometimes we see in marriages that actually the breakdown is because something is being brought into the marriage. Now, the outlook and expectation of the youngsters is all wrong, because sometimes they already are having affairs and they are now, the parents trying to get them married, but they've had this affair. They already have this liking for another woman. And so when they come into the marriage, now as I said, they've already damaged their relationship with Allah, because having an affair, of course, is totally un-Islamic. You're not allowed to do it. And so because of this, now they're coming into the marriage, already there's a problem before they even started to get married. So, of course, no doubt, we want the best for our children, and we want to give them a very good future. We want to give them the good things. We want to give them freedom, etc. But if we do not also give them a good religious education and develop a strong love for God, and put more importance on the winning the pleasure of Allah than winning material things, then we could seriously be damaging our children. And I see this often, unfortunately, that people are wanting their children to get the best education, the best jobs, the best house and everything like that. Of course, we all want to see that. But the most important thing for you is to instill taqwa into your child, to get them to love Allah and run after Allah and be satisfied with whatever they have. If that is not there, then that's going to be something where, despite they got all the degrees, despite that they're being a doctor or some other wonderful job which makes you so proud, if they haven't got Allah, then what's happening? You're going to lose them. So it's very, very important as parents that we develop this taqwa and instill in them this strong sense of winning Allah's pleasure. If they've got that, then whatever problems they face, and of course we all face trials and tribulations, but if they've got that taqwa, then they will keep trying to do their best for Allah's sake and put their trust in Allah. So again, the Holy Prophet Muhammad has informed us that husband and wife should resolve their differences straight away and not leave it overnight. Now, again, it's a very important saying, because whenever there is some sort of differences, of course, naturally, both sides will think they're right. It'll be very, very sad if a person knows that they're wrong. But despite knowing that they're wrong, they are carrying on and saying, yes, I'm right, I'm right. But generally, both sides will feel agreed that they are in the right. So the checks, if it cannot be resolved, then Allah teaches us that for the sake of Allah, we should try to resolve it. And so in the Holy Quran, it states that the husband should have the final say and end the matter. Now, what is this final say? It doesn't mean that the husband, every time he's right. Of course, there will be sometimes he's wrong. You should discuss it. You should listen to each other, try to resolve it. What it means is this thing that I just said, that you should not bring the argument overnight and let it develop. And so it needs to be resolved. So for the sake of Allah, you should make sure that is resolved before you go to bed. And so the husband is given the final say. If you can't finish it, then the husband had the final say. That's when it comes in, only at that time, after everything has been tried. So most of the time, as I said, you should be consulting each other, listening to one another. This is, as I said, very, very important. Often when I'm talking to people, I find this is the problem, that they're not listening to one another. And then try to find what is the best possible solution. Always bearing in mind that you should be putting your full trust in Allah. So, as I said, there will be sometimes shortcomings. We need to pick our fights. We need to overlook sometimes the shortcomings of others and instead look for those good qualities. We all have weaknesses, and you can easily pick out any weakness in any person, but look for the good things. So, like everything in life, if you want a successful marriage, then both parties have to strive to work hard. I'm saying both parties because sometimes what happens is one person is striving hard and the other one stops. And sooner or later, that person will also stop. And when both sides stop, that's it. So it's not for one person, it's for both parties to strive to try to make that marriage work. So it's very important that they are honest and they respect one another to create that Islamic home. And that means, as I said, always striving to put Allah first in whatever you're doing. So if we can achieve that, then not only are you creating a peaceful and loving household, but also you will ensure that your children are growing up in a God-fearing environment. Children pick up mainly on what they see. So no matter what you're telling them, if they're seeing that there's not peace and there's not happiness, that's going to affect them. So if they see that the house is filled with the blessings of Allah, that's going to affect them. And that's what you should be running after. So every one of us should want to have such a household. Therefore, it's important that we work hard to keep seeking the pleasure of Allah in everything that we do. Now, when arranging a marriage, again, it's important, I think, that you should speak to your child first and find out what your child wants. It's not what you want. You are arranging a marriage for them. So find out from them what they're looking for, what would, in their mind, obviously they may be inexperienced. You have to guide them sometimes. But that's what happens. By speaking to them, you can then discuss with them about the prospective partner beforehand, about what their career, purdah, children, how many children they want, do they want them to have purdah and so on and so forth, what careers are they going to be working and so on and so forth. You need to have this sort of idea also in your mind when you're looking for a child, a partner for your child. Of course, and again, this is very important, that when you're creating a match, you should be present with them. Never leave them alone, because emotions can become very strong and those emotions can quickly overtake someone. So you've got to put up the guard. I mean, they're not married yet. They're just trying to find out whether they're suitable for each other. And so there needs to be a chaperone present. But it's good to talk, and it's good for them to talk to each other to see whether they are compatible with each other, whether they're happy with each other. Now, sometimes a child will have fallen in love with someone. They will come home and they'll tell their parents that I've fallen in love with such and such person, I want to marry such and such. And if you don't, then I've got nothing to do with you, and so on and so forth. It has put the parents in a very difficult position now. What should they do? They love their child, but now she or he has said that they've fallen in love with someone and they want to marry that person. Now, sometimes we see that they force a child to marry an Ahmadi to cover up this problem. But if that child is in love with someone else, as I said, you're bringing this then into the marriage, that person will not be fully committed to the marriage because they still love someone else. So this is important, that you need to get this resolved beforehand. The child will hold resentment, and that will come out in the marriage that you proposed. And sometimes the case that they will continue. They will come, as was it, Diana and Charlie, that there will be 3 in a marriage. And how can you have a successful marriage if that's the case? So forcing a child else, this is not the answer. They need to get the child to realize their mistake. There was no courtship in Islam. You should not have been doing this. And this is the result now. Get them to understand, get them to repent, get them to change. But it's a child that needs to be the one to put a stop to that relationship, not yourselves. They need to realize and put an end to it and be determined not to get involved with anyone else until they are married. They need to be able to devote all their energy into the marriage and put their past behind. Now, sometimes the parents will decide to cover up the affair and arrange to get their friend to become an Ahmadi. Now, of course, it's very easy to deceive us. We're just missionaries, we don't know. We presume that you're telling us the truth. So I don't want to start questioning Ahmadis about whether they're telling the truth to me or not. So if they tell me this person is under the tabligh, then of course I will believe them. But this is not going to help. So my advice to all new Ahmadis or someone who wants to become an Ahmadi is that they should study Islam properly and only accept Islam if they truly believe in it. Because this is very, very important, that they should become Muslims. We want them to become Muslims, but for the right reason. If a person just becomes an Ahmadi Muslim by name, they don't care about the religion or anything like that, then it's going to then create problems in the marriage because they don't believe in Allah. So, as I've been saying from the word go, Allah, bringing Allah into the marriage makes that marriage strong. If a person doesn't truly believe in Allah, it's not going to happen. So then we ensure that your child, to whom they have married, will be a good Muslim. Will they ensure that their children will be regular in going to the mosque, will grow up in a God-fearing house? So this is what I often try and get through to people, that don't look at yourself. Yes, you're in love. You love this person, no doubt. But look beyond that. What happens when children come into the house, into the family? How are you going to raise them up to be God-fearing Ahmadi Muslims if your partner does not believe in God, or doesn't believe in Islam, or doesn't believe in Ahmadiyyat? How are you going to get them to go to the mosque and read the Quran and get circumcised and all these sort of things if that person doesn't believe? So this is why you should be going on the same path together. And as I said right at the beginning, that path should be not just for this life, but in the next life as well. But if you are having different beliefs, that will affect you and it will affect your children. So this is what you need to think about. And this is what I try and get people to think about, that before marriage, if they really want to marry this person, that person should study Ahmadiyyat and make a decision whether it's true or not. Of course, we want to make our children happy and we want them to be marrying and be happy. But if they are marrying a disbeliever, what will be the gain? It will affect them, it will affect their children, and they won't have the happiness that they really want. So this is the thing we've got to think about, that do we please our child and displease Allah, or do we run after Allah? So these are some of the problems as to why marriages are breaking down. To make a marriage work, then always strive to win the pleasure of Allah in everything that you do. That will greatly help you through the problems and will develop that love and respect for one another. Right, so again, we're opening up for any comments, any questions, anything you want to say. Yeah, I don't know who this person is, but Hassan Selby, you want to say something?
Yeah, so my question was on the previous slides that you did, but because you said the two were connected, so I waited. Just going back to the wife beating thing, you said that beating is not allowed in Islam. So what does this word mean? Like what are some examples of what would come under this category of chastise the wife? And also in connection with this as well, do we have any examples? You said the Holy Prophet ﷺ never did it, but what about his companions? Are there any examples from their lives about this chastisement of wives?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, pre-Islam, as I said, this was very, very common. Now, the story goes, I'm sure you've read it, how the women were complaining to the Holy Prophet Muhammad about the husbands were beating them. And the Holy Prophet was saying, no, you should not beat the wives. And so then later on, the men come up to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and said, because of this, now the women are becoming unruly and we got no control of them. So this is why maybe this verse came, that there is a form of chastisement, but that's not beating. You should not leave any mark on your wife, or face or body or anything like this. There are different forms of chastisement, and I gave the example of a child, of trying to get through to them your displeasure. And this is the sort of chastisement that should be there. So, I mean, if some spanking, as you do with your child, but really, I mean, it shouldn't be even that if you can help it. It should be just trying to punish them through other ways of getting it through to them that this is wrong. So, I mean, the main thing, as I said, in this country, this is not allowed. In Islam, it's not allowed. And so we should not be doing this. Now, I know that unfortunately, sometimes through custom, it's come in and we've seen that the parents used to beat the wife, and the children saw that. And so they start beating their wife, their children saw that, and they start beating their wife, and so on and so forth. And so this has a knock-on effect. But this should not be the way. And there's no need for it. As I said, you don't want to divorce, no doubt. But this is not the way that you start forcing a person, whether it's a child, beating a child, whether it's a wife or anybody, a servant or anybody. We should not be resorting to violence. So there are ways which we can punish the person without doing the violence. So this is what this is trying to say in this verse of the Holy Quran. Not that as people are taking it literally, oh, this is giving me permission to beat my wife. This is not the case. But some sort of trying to punish the wife to get her to change, looking into other ways rather than using violence, because violence is not the way forward. I hope that's explained it for you.
Sorry, not really, but can you like specify a bit more? Because we already had in the verse about saying to them, like speaking to them, as you mentioned, the first thing is you speak with them and you ask them not to do it. So clearly speaking to them is not what is being referred to here. So what is being referred? Can you give like a more specific example or something specific?
I mean, let's say, for instance, you don't take them out, you don't do something which they want to do. This is all a form of chastisement, of a punishment as such. So as I said, I don't know, it depends on the relationship between the husband and wife, but you need to do something which will help her to realize that this is not right, what you're doing. So without having to beat the person, but try to get through to them. So it takes, you know, as you said, you try to resolve things through talking. You try to resolve things by not sleeping with them. But if still that hasn't happened, then a further sort of punishment, whatever that way is, to try to get them to understand that this is wrong. I can't think of anything because I don't do such things, but I mean, there must be some sort of way you can get through to punish your wife without actually hitting her. And that's the best way. I mean, we shouldn't be hitting our wives. So look for a different way to punish her if you have to. I mean, it's a final resort, like I say. You should not really have to be doing that. But if you haven't been able to resolve things, rather than break the marriage up, then try to find another way of inflicting some sort of punishment on her, stopping spending on something or whatever it is to get across to her. I hope that's helped. As I said, it doesn't happen in my family. So as you know, I've never beaten your wife. So there are ways you look around to other ways.
Okay, and are there any examples from the companions of the Holy Prophet about these steps being taken, 1, 2, 3?
I mean, as I said, that you've got the pre-Islam, but once the Holy Prophet was making this clear, then things changed, of course. And we saw this all the time, that people developed, people changed. I can't think of any particular example to mind, but obviously this was the example of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. Throughout all his marriages, there's no cases at all that he beat any of his wives. And as for his companions, hopefully that also was not the case. I can't think of any recording where it's saying that, I mean, that's trouble with the hadith, of course, that it doesn't actually give you the time scale as to when this particular verse was revealed and what happened after it. But I presume that they did not beat their wives after that. Okay. Right. And RH, you want to say something?
So I just wanted to ask, so you've clearly mentioned that divorce should be you know, it's disliked, and it's the very, very most extreme of situations you can go towards to. But if you are in an abusive or toxic relationship and you have tried everything, would it not be better for, you know, your own mental and physical well-being along with your children to leave that relationship?
Yes, unfortunately, if that is the case. I mean, as we said, although divorce is disliked, Allah accepts it. Now, in Islam, generally, as I said, you should try and work it out with yourselves. Then what it says is that get one person from one family, one person from the other family, and try to find, help to counsel, or get a missionary or something like this, someone else to try to bring them together and discuss it and try and resolve that. But then if that also fails, and as you said, if it is such a bad marriage, then divorce has to happen. So again, even in divorce, there are still checks. We don't believe, as in Ged Amdi's, you just say talak, talak, talak. That's it, finished there and then. There is a 3-month period to see if there's any child being born, and during that time, the lady should be in the house of the home. Now, of course, if it is abusive, like you're saying, the lady may not want to be in the house. That's a different kettle of fish if the lady chooses not to be in the house. But the idea is that they were in the house together, and over that 3-month period, again, they come back together. And if they come back together anytime during that 3 months, then it's not a divorce. So this is a lot what the Ged Amdis seem to miss out, that this 3-month waiting period is there before the divorce gets counted. Now, of course, we also say that if it ends up in divorce, if they haven't come together after these 3 months, then we believe that you can remarry your wife or remarry someone else. Whereas Ged Amdi say, no, you can't remarry your wife. But that's counted as the first time you can remarry your wife. If, God forbid, that also ends up in divorce, you've gone through all these checks and still there's a divorce and it's a final there. So then again, that's the second one. And now you can remarry your wife for a third time or marry someone else. But if that third time ends up in divorce and you've gone through all the checks and then it ends up in divorce, now it's the final divorce. You can't remarry your wife. You have to marry someone else. So Ged Amdi have combined their feet. They said talak, 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 and they jumped all these 3 different marriages and said it's all one and the same. And that's it. You can't remarry your wife. It doesn't matter if you say talak, talak 3 times, you say it 100 times, it's counted as one divorce. So divorce is there. If it is a problem and it can't be resolved, then of course divorce is the answer. And that sometimes does happen very early in the marriage. Sometimes it happens a long time after the marriage. If you can't resolve the matter, then yes, Allah accepts it. But as I said, we all are answerable to Allah for everything we do. And we're answerable to Allah for divorce as well. So it's got to be something where we have tried our best. But if it is abusive, like you're saying, then of course that's not good for you. That's not good for your children. And so divorce seems to be the only answer if he's not going to curb his ways. And normally, if a person has got this violent streak, it normally does continue. We've seen this, unfortunately, again, a few times. I know of where a woman has gone back to her husband and the same thing has happened again. So even though he is very regretful and sorrow, generally, if they have that trait, then they will recall to violence. So this is why I say taqwa is very, very important. And you curb your passions. You don't allow your anger to overcome you and start hitting out and so on and so forth. I hope that's helped.
Yeah, Jazakallah.
Okay, anybody else who's got anything they want to say?
There's quite a few questions in the chat, if I may.
MashaAllah, yes, go ahead. How are we doing for time?
The first question is, what does Islam say about haq meher? If a wife is getting her haq meher, does the husband still need to give her pocket money, or is the haq meher enough? And what if the husband is refusing to give pocket money and says that your haq meher should be enough?
Okay, so first of all, haq meher is something which is promised at the time of marriage. And this is a promise, it's got to be fulfilled. But we need to understand that the hakmer is the money for the lady. The man has got no access at all to it. His role is the provider, and his job is to provide for his wife and his family. And the hakmer is completely separate to that. Now, of course, women, if they're getting money, whether it's hakmer or earnings or something like that, they may want to spend on the clothes, on food, on the house, and so on and so forth. That's their choice. But the husband cannot make any demands. So even if the woman is going out to work, that money she earns is hers. The husband is the provider. He's got no right over her money or her property. As I said, if she agrees, then that's something else. But the husband, he has to provide. Now, there may sometimes be a situation where the wife is earning more than the husband, or the husband's not earning at all. But that's, again, something you discuss amongst yourselves. But the role of the husband is the provider. The main role of the woman is to look after the house, look after the family. So if she can look after the house, look after the family, they've reached an age where maybe there's no children, or they've reached an age where they're going to school and stuff like that, and she is free. And if the husband agrees, then she can go out and earn any money. But as I said, that's her money. The husband has no right over it unless she chooses. I hope that's answered that.
The next question I think you've already answered is about divorce and 3 months period. So I'll move on to the next one. The next question is, what type of disobedience by a woman gives a man the permission to raise their hand?
Well, as I've been trying to say, a man should not raise his hand over anything. Just because he's stronger than a woman does not mean that he can use violence. With that, as we've been explaining, that chastisement, he should look at other ways in which to punish the woman, not by raising hands. So this is never the way forward. So this should not be the mindset of any person, that they need to beat their child, they need to beat the wife, they need to beat anybody that they feel they're stronger than. That's not the way in Islam. So there are other ways you can chastise a person by making that person be punished without raising your hand. What those ways are is something for the person to figure out in his relationship. But violence is never the way forward. So this is not what Allah expects. It's not what the Holy Prophet's example is. And it's not what we should be doing. And it's not allowed in this country as well. Okay. Any other questions, or is that it?
That was all from the chat room.
Right. So anybody got anything else they would like to ask or share with us? Or alhamdulillah, there's quite a number of ladies present. So please, if you do not feel comfortable speaking out, you can send a message through the chat.
Assalamualaikum, I just had a question as well. I wanted to ask, as we've been speaking about, there is in this society that we live, there's a lot of divorces that are happening as well. So how can we basically, when speaking to people and educating them at the same time, how can we basically tell them that if you are kind of following true teachings of Islam and following taqwa and understanding that and adapting that in your relationship, how can that truly lead to a happy marriage life?
Because in Islam, we should be trying to cut off our ego. And instead of thinking what we want, what our desires are, we should always be thinking, if I say this, if I do this, will Allah be pleased? And what that is, like I say, it then cuts off this ego of yourself, your desires. And instead you strive to please Allah. Now, if you can achieve that, your whole direction in life changes. It's no longer, I want this, give me. Instead, you're thinking, if I do this, will Allah be pleased? And so with that in mind, it's the same would be applied to your marriage. That, yes, you may want certain things, but you think, if I do that, that's my own desire. What does Allah want? What's the example of the Holy Prophet? And then follow that. And so the whole outlook to marriage changes. This is why I keep stressing on the importance of bringing Allah into the relationship. Now, I used the example of an argument. Now, of course, in Islam, generally it says within 3 days you resolve the argument. The reason being that the first day you're angry with each other, the second day you start cooling down, and the third day, then you can hopefully resolve it. If you do not resolve that argument, then what generally happens is it continues on and on and on. You even forget about what the argument's about. You just know, I'm not speaking to that person. So that is trying to please Allah, resolve it within 3 days. But as I said, with a husband and wife, it's different because of the close connection of each other. So therefore, you should not go to bed angry with each other. You need to resolve that problem. And how do you resolve it? So you try to, I'd say, resolve it. And if you can't resolve it, then for the sake of Allah, even though you think that I'm right, my wife's wrong, for the sake of Allah, then you try to resolve it. Now, of course, there are some things which we pick our fights. We can say, okay, I can compromise with this, I can allow this. There are some things which are un-Islamic, which you can't allow. And that, of course, you can't do anything but say, no, this is Islamic, we can't do that, end of story, bus, no more. So this is the importance, and this is what we try to get through to people, that why in Islam, the marriage can be very successful if you follow the teachings, is because you're bringing Allah into the equation. And whenever you bring Allah into the equation, then inshallah, you can have a very successful marriage.
Jazakallah, Professor.
Okay, and Hassan, you had your hand up. Do you still want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this punish thing, the other way around as well. Like the wife can chastise the husband if he is disobedient. And does the disobedience only refer to religious matters, or is it all matters?
Normally, it's not religious; it's irreligious that's cause of disobedience. Yeah, sometimes women try to hit or chuck things at you and things like that. It applies to both. Obviously, a man should not hit the woman, and a woman should not hit the man. It may not hurt the man, that's here or there. The thing is that by doing such an action, then that's going to cause even greater resentment, and that can then lead on to further things. So, I mean, I'd say if, for instance, the girl is doing something which is normally irreligious, it's un-Islamic. And this is why it's got to this point. If the person's doing something Islamic, then the husband should not be objecting. It's because they're not doing the Islamic thing. They're having an affair, they are spending money unwisely, or whatever is the issue. That's when obviously you start putting these steps in to try to resolve the matter, or it comes to an end. Okay, so anybody else got anything they want to say, or shall we bring it close? Okay, I'm going to take that as everybody's happy. If you've got any further questions, of course, you can always send them to Toby or Zaid, and we'll try and answer those if possible. Likewise with topics, this is not really Islamic, a preaching topic, but it's an important topic which was asked. But that's the thing, if anybody's got a topic they want to cover, even if it's a Tabiat topic, then again, contact Toby or Zaid, and inshallah, we'll look into it and see if we can do such a topic. So please, then let's finish with silent prayer. If you can join me in silent prayer. Bismillah. Amin. Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.